He's one of your idols?
I've been hearing him for years,
Yeah?
since I was a kid.
Because I was looking through Billboard, and there's a picture of you and him in Billboard, I think last week's Billboard or something. What are your musical influences? You seem to have a lot of Latin influence to your music. Are you influenced by bossa nova or any sort of...
Oh, very much.
Uh-huh.
All of the Latin musics, you know, from South America, Brazil, the islands, Puerto Rico,
Would
Cuba.
seem that way by the titles of all of your albums
Yeah.
and the inflection and all of
And
it.
Spain and the Mediterranean.
Your titles, I came up with a word to compose, to pretty much describe the type of titles you come up with for the albums. I call them great adjective adventures, especially this one. First cut on the album, great title, Alien Chase on Arabian Desert. Now, since, with the exception of I Can Tell, just about everything that you've composed has been instrumental music,
Right.
how do you come up with the titles for something if it's not really, or do you actually add lyrics and then kind of get rid of them and keep the instrumental side of the music?
Well, on the instrumental tunes, I normally will write the music and then listen back to it when it's all done.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever pictures I get of the music, you know, it's pretty easy to come up with a title.
Because I see on each particular song you have here, you pretty much describe how the idea came along. And an eventful chase across Arabian desert after an alien has landed after traveling millions of light years from his stellar suburban home on a planet somewhere on the outer reaches of deep space. So that'd make a great movie. Did you ever think of getting into writing scripts and things? You seem to have a great for adjectives and putting together ideas.
I think that might happen soon, sure.
Because the idea of this, especially with with all of your titles and the covers of your albums, there always seems to be a story, and there's always a nice young lady on there as well. It would seem to me that it would make kind of an interesting videotape or something. Have you been working on things like that?
Well, we're thinking about doing one now.
Because it'd be wonderful. This is a great time. I love that. Out of all the albums you've done, let me see, you've done 4 solo albums now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is your favorite?
Well, I think
the
this
one that means the most to you?
I think this one.
Yeah? Is it
think
because
so.
of the amount of time that it took and what it represents to you?
No, I got to do everything on this one.
Uh-huh.
I sing on it for the first time.
How was that?
How was that?
Well, how did you enjoy it?
I enjoyed it very much.
Uh-huh.
You know, it was more challenging.
Now, this is the first time that you've actually acknowledged having your own, quote, band,
Right.
as opposed to the other albums. How did you go about finding the members?
Well, they were out on tour with me before we did the record. And, you know, they were recommended to me through people that played with Michael Walden, who's a drummer.
Right.
He used to play with John McLaughlin.
Mm-hmm.
They were in his band at one time.
The audiences, most of the guests that I've had, I pretty much will ask the same question to them, the differences between audiences in different parts of the world. I had Phil Collins on from Genesis some time ago, and he remarked there's such an intense difference between audience reactions in the United States than there is in Europe. He says that in Europe, everybody has a very passé type of a conceited attitude. They'll just sit there and they'll just, you know, watch it, and they'll constantly criticize the music and wonder if you're playing a 16th note here, you're playing an 8th note here, why didn't you do this, why didn't you play that? He says the audiences in this country pretty much just sit there and absorb the music and enjoy it, as opposed to criticizing it. Do you find a difference between New York and LA audiences that would compare to that?
No, not at all.
It's just about the same?
Yeah. Very enthusiastic.
Right.
Which really helps the performance. You know, like in Europe, it's hard to say that they're like that over there. You know, I find the audiences not to be too different than the United States, except maybe in Germany, the northern countries.
What is the difference there?
They sit and listen, and that's it. They don't shout in the middle of a song when they hear a fast lick or
scream
something.
rock and roll or Stairway to Heaven or
and
something?
They sit very still, and if you're used to playing in front of U.S. audiences, that can scare you, because right away you're thinking that they're not liking it or something.
But they just
in
react.
reality, they're just you know, respecting what you're doing, and they want to hear every little nuance.
The audience that you attract is an interesting audience because you call your music progressive. You get people that are stalwart jazz freaks, and yet you get kids that are into Led Zeppelin or something because you're notorious as a very fast player. Do you feel that a lot of the audience is there simply to watch you play very fast as opposed to really sitting and listening to your songs and what you're trying to get across? A lot of these people think you're a flashy performer because you're very fast. You stand up there and everybody watches and they scream because you do a really fast lick or something.
Yeah, there's a bunch that come for that.
Does that bother you?
If I dominated the set with playing a lot of fast licks, it would bother me, yeah.
But you do lots of slow
them,
things
I think,
as well.
too. Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The composition is the main part of the show, I think.
You have a great deal of talented friends that you've played with on lots of albums. I list here Chick Corea, Jan Hammer, Les Paul, Mingo Lewis, and they often record with you on your albums and things. What's the difference between working with all of these people when you're producing a record as opposed to working with your own band where you really have the total direction of what's being played, etc.? Is there lots of room for ideas from them and improvisation, or do you try to...
I think so. I think so. They come up with some good ideas and usually use them.
Right.
You know. It's also like, it makes the album an event when they're on it.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, it certainly does. You played with Les Paul for the first time.
Yeah.
Whatever happened to Mary Ford? Is she...
Mary passed away.
She did?
A couple of years ago.
Huh.
Yeah. But they've been divorced since 1962, I believe.
That is amazing.
Yeah. Les is now in the hospital, I think, having open heart surgery.
Really?